Did you know that the phrase fear not appears just about 365 times in the Bible? That's approximately one for every day of the year. We won't be talking about fear today though, but instead we'll be talking about its direct opposite, which is courage. In 2 Timothy, the first chapter, the 7th verse, the Bible says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and of timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." When we think of courage in the Bible, many times, we think of David facing Goliath and killing a bear, and of the 3 Hebrews who faced King Nebuchadnezzar and being thrown into the fire. Most of us tend to think of courage in association with feats of strength or magnificent acts that may be really hard for most of us to pull off today on a day-to-day basis. We don't generally think of courage in the heart, and yet it's one of the most vital parts of us as Christians. One of the least people who comes to mind when you think of courage is Rebecca. Her name is not really synonymous with the word courage. I'd like to show you today why she was one of the most courageous women in the Bible. The Bible tells us that when Abraham was getting ready to die, he wanted a wife for his beloved son, Isaac, the son of promise, the son of his old age. And so he made his servant promise that he would find a virtuous woman for his son, a woman who would treat his son right, a woman who would love his son's God, a woman who would comfort his son. So Abraham dies and his servant goes on to try to fulfill his promise to Abraham. And on getting to Abraham's homeland where he had been sent, he prays a very important prayer that's also interesting. Here, Rebecca comes and we see the first sign of her courage in her openness to people. This is a stranger asking her to give water, not just to him, but to all his camels. He knew he'd asked a hard thing. The Bible even says that while she was watering the camel, he wondered at her. Most people would be suspicious. I would be wondering if this stranger was genuine, if he was trying to take advantage of my kindness. But Rebecca looked with the eyes of faith, the eyes of courage, the eyes of love, and only saw goodness. Again, remember in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, it says, "God has not given us a spirit of fear and of timidity, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." From welcoming the servant of Abraham to her family after finding out who he was, to embracing the husband and new home he had come to introduce to her, even if it meant leaving her home and everything she was familiar with, to trusting God and the goodness and the word of the servant representing Abraham, to taking Isaac as her husband in her heart immediately. The Bible tells us that the first time she laid eyes on him, she covered her hair in honor of him, the way a bride would. We see Rebecca embrace her changing situations with such courage, openness of heart, and trust that he would make all things work out for her good. It takes courage to be open to new opportunities, no matter how scary they may be. It takes courage to hope when you've been disappointed in the past. It takes courage to be open to people, no matter how many times you've been hurt before. It takes courage to let others see all the parts of you, especially when you are afraid if they'll like what they'll see. God is calling you to be courageous today. You may not have thought of all these as feats of courage before, but now, for many of us, where we most need to be courageous is not in the lion's den like Daniel or with physical Goliaths. Your Goliath may be letting a friend or co-worker who's been violating your boundaries know that they've been doing so in love, even though you are so scared of how they will see you after. For some of us, it will mean starting that new business, even though you've never owned a business. Some of you will need to be vulnerable with your spouses or family or friends and bare your hearts when you've never done so before and you don't know how they'll respond. And for most of us, courage might mean being yourself with God, weaknesses and all, bringing it all to Him, venting it if you must, but trusting that when He says nothing will ever make Him love you less or stop you from being His beloved child, the apple of His eye, He really means it. You may be saying in your mind right now, you don't understand. If only you knew how badly I've been hurt in the past. If only you knew how I've been disappointed. I agree that I may not know, but there is one who knows. You may have been hiding yourself away in fear, hiding away from opportunities, pretending pretending you don't really want them just because you are scared to take the risk to hope. You're scared to reach out for what you want in case you are disappointed again. And yet, if you never reach out, there is no possibility at all of ever having it. Fear or lack of courage will only keep us farther away from what we truly want. The Bible tells us that hope deferred makes the heart sick. We're talking about courage today because the truth is, whatever you truly desire may be risky, but if paid off, when you do take that risk, will be so worth it. Rebecca could have decided not to take the risk on Isaac, someone she had never met. Rebecca could have decided not to take the risk on him, but she did take that step. She could have decided not to risk ever leaving her father's house, which was her comfort zone. She could have decided not to trust the strange man or the strange land she had never been to before, or not to trust the strange man who was now supposed to be her husband until he could prove himself. But she decided to take a risk on all, and in turn, God gave her a love story for the ages. Trust God today. Begin to take those steps of courage and see the magnificent things begin to happen in your life, because to be courageous is to take a step in faith. To be courageous is to trust God. To be courageous is to put your strength not in yourself, but to put your strength in God. God bless you.